So hello, everyone. Very welcome to the second IUC Alumni Talk in 2022. Today, we're so honored that we have Erika Enomoto here as our guest. She's a program management at Microsoft, and we would love to hear about her journey, her career orientation, and the omotenashi in a tech company. So welcome, Erika. And before we begin, here are some little asks. So please mute yourself. And if you would like, you can change your display name to your first name, last name, IUC graduation year. Yes. So I'll change mine later. And here's our nice IUC Alumni Talk organizing committee. We also have Lily who's not here, and maybe we can have a very quick round of self-intro starting from Richard.
Yes, hi everyone. Richard Sloboda here. I see lots of repeaters, so I'll make this brief. I've lived in Japan off and on for 15 years, going back to the IUC in 2003. We started this event as a way to, especially during Corona, give people a chance to connect. Corona's slowly coming to a close, hopefully, or live with Corona. I just got back from an overseas trip yesterday. But we still have alumni scattered across Japan, around the world. So hopefully these events are still meaningful even when you're out and about in real life. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you, Richard. I guess I'll take the baton from here. I'm Sabrina. Hi, I'm supporting the Japanese market currently at the monetization integrity team in TikTok. I'm actually based in Singapore, but I graduated from the IUC not so long ago, 2 years ago now, while we were the batch that got our lessons moved online in the middle of the pandemic. But it's really nice to see everyone today, and hope you enjoy today's session.
This is Tarani. I'm only one cohort ahead of Sabrina. I graduated in 19. I'm a PhD candidate at Stanford. And yeah, pass on to Jasmine.
Hi, yeah, sorry I don't have my camera on. Internet over here is kind of rough, but I'm Jasmine and I'm currently an IUC student, and I'll be finishing the program in another month. So I'm really excited for that. And my hobbies are just kind of typical otaku things. So I like to draw, play video games, and try limited edition foods here. So yeah, thank you all for coming.
Here's some information about IUC Alumni Talks. So it's a web series that aims to create a space for the IUC Alumni Network to share their personal journeys with each other and the intrinsic public, including future IUC students. So through this series, we hope to build a strong community among people with diverse associations with Japan. So if you would like to go back to some previous talks, here's the QR code. And if you would like to take a screenshot or have your smartphone to scan the QR code, you can have access to our YouTube account where you can find all previous talks that we have the guest permission to publish. And okay, I'll move on. What past talks we have. Here are our 8 past speakers. So Erika-san is the 9th one. So I'm really looking forward to today's talk. So here's today's program. So we'll have 5 minutes of intro, and then we'll have a moderator-led conversation for approximately 30 minutes. Then we'll have interactive quiz, and then Q&A. We'll have a quick group photo and wrap up. And then if you would like to stick around for some networking, we'll have 30 minutes that we put you into breakout rooms. Okay, I'll pass the floor to you, Sabrina.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Tarani. So let me introduce our speaker first. Today we have Erika Enomoto, who's doing program management at Microsoft. Hi, Erika. She wanted to give a quick wave. Thank you, Erika. So Erika's career has taken her to many spaces across the globe. and disciplines and sectors. And born in Hawaii, Erika actually obtained a bachelor's degree in business administration from the University of Hawai'i before she started to work for a Japanese marketing company in her home state. And her interest in the arts later inspired her to apply to graduate school at the University of Hawai'i, where she obtained a MA in art history. And after moving to Seattle, she further obtained an MS in information management, as well as a professional certificate in storytelling and content strategy from the University of Washington. And this led Erika to the nonprofit space in Seattle, where she worked in communications for the Glass Art Society and later for Artists Trust. And currently, Erika is working as a program manager at Microsoft, where she applies creativity and omotenashi to the onboarding experience of Microsoft Azure users. And for those who are not familiar, that's the company's cloud computing platform. A passionate advocate for empowerment and accessibility, Erika also sits on the steering committee for Women in Customer Experience, which is a Microsoft employee resource group that's dedicated to building a strong community of women in the customer experience team. Erika attended both the IUC summer program in 2013 as well as a 10-month program from 2014 to 2015, during which she was also an active member of the Business Club and the Shodo Club. Those are things that I am very excited to hear more about Erika. So yeah, I think in preparing for this talk and being able to hear about Erika's journey, I've really gotten a lot of food for thought on being purposeful about self-discovery and career reinvention. And I'm also really excited for her to share how she applies the principles of omotenashi in tech. So 早速始めさせていただきたいと思いますが、Erika, where does the story of Erika and Japan begin?
Yeah, thanks so much for that lovely introduction. It's kind of amazing how many things I've tried and done and everything. So, but I was born and raised in Honolulu. I'm half Filipino and half Japanese. My dad was, or I'm third generation Japanese American. And my grandfather, my Ji-chan, was bilingual. He was born in LA and moved back to Hiroshima a little bit before World War II, and where he served as an interpreter for first the Tokyo, or I guess the Japanese Imperial Army, and then the American military that were occupying Japan after the war. In the 1960s, he ended up taking, my grandmother, him, and my dad and my three aunts to Seattle. So they immigrated from Hiroshima to Seattle and really had to assimilate to American life. And before that, my dad did not know English. So it was really a big struggle for him to have to learn a new language at 12 years old. But I think he did really well as far as being able to kind of ascend and eventually go to pharmacy school at the University of Washington. Although he spoke Japanese with his family, or his mom and his sisters, he spoke English at home since my mom does not speak Japanese. So English was the primary language used in our house. However, he did start sending me to Japanese school when I was 5 years old. So I used to go to the Honganji summer program in my hometown of Mililani. And that's where I learned how to, speak basic phrases and also how to read and write hiragana and katakana. And since then, since Hawaii has a really big reliance on Japanese tourism, I ended up continuing studying Japanese throughout middle school, high school, and then in college as well. And I eventually studied abroad at Obrin Daigaku, which is in Machida, Tokyo, during my undergrad.
That's amazing. Wow, learning Japanese at 5. Erika must have been very, was that a thing that 5-year-old Erika looked forward to, or?
I think it was just something that, I just felt like, okay, this is fun at the time. And a lot of my friends were doing it too. So it was just something that kind of came with, I guess, being half Japanese and yeah.
So what led you to the IUC? How did you know about their program?
Yeah, so what led me to the IUC was when I was in graduate school at the University of Hawaii and studying art history, I had a few senpai that told me, oh, you should think about going to this program. Like it was really helpful, especially when you have to do research. I ended up applying in 2013 for a summer FLAS, so a foreign language area studies fellowship. And then I got it and then ended up going to Japan for about 3 months and living in Yokohama. And luckily, when I had studied abroad in the past, although my school was in Machida, Tokyo, I was living in Kanazawa Bunko in Yokohama. So it was about an hour and a half commute by train. But that also made me more familiar with the Yokohama area. So it felt really comfortable. And I also when I found out that the school was actually in like the Intercontinental Hotel, which is that sailboat shaped building, it was really cool to point out, when you see any skylines, photos of Yokohama, like that's where I'm going to school. So it really made me feel proud.
And I'm sure the 1.5-hour commute must have been super fun during rush hour.
Oh yeah, it was, at least it gave me an authentic Japanese experience, I guess, which I think a lot of my fellow students who live in dormitories near campus didn't really have, so.
Right. Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about your time at the IUC. What did you do there? What courses did you take? Any particularly fond memories?
Yeah, so other than the core language courses that we take, I did take specializations in art history since I was studying art history at the time, and that was with Kushida sensei, and then I also took the business classes with Ohashi sensei. So those were kind of my main focuses. And also I was lucky after I finished the 10-month program, I got another FLAS and got to use that funding to do a P course. So the professional courses where you kind of focus on our particular, maybe some articles and translate them with the help of one of the senseis. So I got to work on translating some articles about kawaii ron, so like kawaii theory with Adi sensei. So yeah, those were kind of like the focuses that I had. But other than that, like I kind of was big on extracurricular activities, probably more than I should have been, but I ended up taking calligraphy classes with Kobayashi sensei. That was really exciting. And there was an exhibition at the end of the year during the Happyokai. So we got to show like all of our different works. And then another club that I was a part of was Business Club. And one of the memorable times that I think of is when we got to go on a trip that was all expenses paid to Nakano City in Nagano Prefecture, and then we got to pick apples and paint maneki neko and then go to a mushroom farm. So it was really cool to see like the local industries there, and also kind of inspired at least me to think about maybe eventually moving to one of these cities, and maybe when I'm older and retired. So
That sounds like such a great experience. Like you managed to have a range of very different experiences at the IUC.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think the IUC has a lot of opportunities that, folks that are current students and even alumni should take advantage of. And there's a very strong relationship with like Tsurugaoka Hachimangu Shrine in Kamakura, where a few students and I got to participate in like the Yabusame kind of festivities in November, as well as other activities, and their collaboration with the iHouse. Like there's just a lot of great things you kind of make time for, because it lets you see Japan through a different lens.
That's so cool. And you talked a little bit about studying art history with Kushida sensei. I think from what we understand, art history is a core part of your journey. Could you tell us a little bit more about your background in this, and how did that lead to your current role in Microsoft?
Yeah, so I guess I started to get interested in Japanese art and aesthetics after I was taking literature courses at Obiden Daigaku. And I think everyone who studies Japanese has read The Tale of Genji. So what really kind of made me interested in Japanese art was just looking at those hand scrolls and seeing, how emotions are kind of conveyed through, non-obvious and nuanced ways. And I mean, in high school, I was a really big fan of a contemporary artist named Yoshitomo Nara. So I think there's a lot of things that I just was attracted to as far as like a visual culture element, because it's so different from what we kind of grow up here in America. And it's just, it just fascinated me at the time. But as far as how I draw on that in my current career, so I work in data and I do a lot of data visualization. So I really lean on, the visual culture aspect and making sure that, the things that I'm creating and putting forward, for example, different charts or graphs and things like that, that they are easily comprehensible and people don't have to take a lot of time to decipher what it means. So I think being able to lean on, art history background as far as like, visual literacy and like implementing or exercising like pattern matching really helps me in my current profession.
It's interesting how you connect those. And you also went to the University of Washington Information School, is that right?
Yes.
And is that how you managed to connect your, can you tell us a little bit more about like why you decided to go there? And
yeah, sure. So at the time after I came back from the IUC and I was in my final year at the University of Hawaiʻi, I realized there are not a lot of opportunities as far as, having an arts career that can pay the bills. I don't think that's possible in a lot of places actually. But at the time I realized like I do have to maybe move to what we call the mainland. So, moving to the continental US and seeing what opportunities there might be there. So I worked at a few nonprofits, and then that's how I got into marketing communications, which also drew on my former professional background. And, working there, I, was responsible for creating annual reports and, being able to tell the story of what our nonprofit was able to accomplish within the past year through data and through storytelling. So I was doing that kind of ad hocly. But after I gave birth to my son, I realized this is something that I want to dig more into, especially with data. And I ended up leaving my job and applying to graduate school to get a Master of Science in Information Management. So that's kind of the path that led me there, was kind of recognizing, what interests me, and also just figuring out what are the skills that I can build off that I already gained through professional experiences.
yeah, it's so interesting how you talk about like how your background in art history led you to data and the principles that you pay attention to when you're looking at data, creating data visualizations and things like that because of your background in art history.
Mm-hmm.
What did you study at the information school?
Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of like everything is information, right? So, but what I studied there, I specialized in data science and user experience research. So I think, for me, wanting to get like really strong technical skills, because I don't have a traditional background in tech. I thought that was very important, especially since we see a lot of companies and organizations becoming more data driven. Sorry, my dog is shaking. You can hear that. So that was one aspect. And then also studying user experience research, which I felt, something that I really cared about, as far as making sure that whatever we're providing folks, whether it's a product, a service, a framework or process, is user-centered, and it's something that they can use as opposed to something that we think they could use. So I think it ties in a lot with like this theme of this talk of omotenashi as well.
Yeah, actually, I would love to ask you a little bit more about that. Maybe before we do that, I would love if we could talk a little bit more about your job at Microsoft. You touched upon it a little bit earlier, but could we hear more details about what you do, whom you serve, and whether your current job scope is connected to Japan in any way?
Yeah, sure. So Microsoft is a huge company. So I work in Azure, which, as Sabrina mentioned earlier, is one of our clouds, our computing clouds. So where I sit in Azure is the customer experience program. And the program I support is called Fast Track for Azure, which is a technical onboarding program. So we support customers as they onboard to the cloud. So taking their on-prem databases or any services to Azure and the services and solutions that we offer. And as far as my role, I sit in what is called the PMO, or the Program Management Office, and I support the business with data and insights and reporting, so that when we are talking about, what is the impact of our program, we're able to pull the right data and the most accurate data and provide our stakeholders, who are also, our business leaders, and also other departments within Microsoft, or other organizations within Microsoft, like finance, marketing, sales, the product group. So yeah, it's a very cross-functional facing role. And as far as, our customers, my customers that I refer to as my customers are the PMs and engineers, or the program managers and engineers that are actually interfacing with real customers. And these real customers would be like organizations like, small or businesses or government entities and things like that.
That's so interesting. And do you serve like teams in Japan or?
Yeah, so we do have a team that supports the Japan subsidiary. And so we do have some engineers and PMs there that support customers as they, decide which cloud they want to go with and which services that they need. And I'm lucky to, because I sit in the PMO, I do interface with them a lot. It's just that, Microsoft is a multinational company, and most multinational companies lean on English because it's a common, language. So we do have conversations in Japanese, but we try not to be respectful of other folks that may not be unable to understand Japanese that might be in our meetings.
Right. Well, even if you don't use Japanese with them all the time, I'm sure your background with Japan comes in handy in understanding like how to navigate communications with the team in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a little bit about like how you apply omotenashi in your current role. Could we hear a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I'm also curious to see what folks have put in the Wordcloud in that Mentimeter exercise. But, I think when I think of omotenashi, I think of, going to a ryokan and then, having things provided for you before you even realize that you need them. So like having slippers for you before you walk into the room, and things like that. So I think how I apply that in my work is that there are a lot of, my customers, so the people that consume the data that I'm compiling, I want to make sure that they're able to understand it quickly and without having to second guess like what is being presented to them. And for example, I like to listen. I like to ask questions and learn about their perspective as far as how, being able to decipher what their challenges are, because often like folks don't know what is actually a problem for them. So through observation, through kind of really learning who my customer is, like I can start to infer things, for example, like them maybe questioning some of the data they're seeing, but it's not actually the data they're questioning. They're actually perhaps not familiar with Power BI, which is a tool that we use for business intelligence. So rather than kind of, kind of letting them know like, hey, this is right, I like to dig in a little deeper and then maybe even offer them, the opportunity to come into office hours so that I can teach them how to use the Power BI tool, which actually gets them more familiar with it and makes them more comfortable with what they're seeing. So there's a lot of things that I feel like in my job I can't take as face value, especially when folks actually don't know what their real challenge is. So being able to take kind of like a ryokan keeper or owner's like perspective as far as really observing what my customers doing, how they're behaving, maybe kind of what they're thinking, and also being able to deliver, a solution for them that they might not even realize there's a problem for, or that they have a problem with. So that's kind of the perspective that I'm taking as far as like having a user-focused or a customer-centered philosophy.
That's so interesting. I think like it's so curious to me, like how even though your current career is not Japan centric, you've been able to apply like things that you've learned about Japan or like your background with Japan to your current job. I think many of the IUC alumni, we're still exploring a career path. Not everyone necessarily is able to embark on career paths that are focused on Japan. So I think this will be very inspirational for many of us. I mean, I hear from your journey that you've made like a lot of pivots from art history to data, from nonprofit space to tech. What are your takeaways from this journey of like pivoting and changing, and how do we leverage our experiences with Japan along the journey?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think, through this process of thinking about like, wow, there's a lot of like, it's a windy world. It's a non-linear path, but I think that's what's important, is to always be curious about new things. I mean, nothing is static. Identities are not fixed. You can always change who you are whenever, you feel like you need to. And I think that's important because that also applies to your career. And I think if you feel like you're stuck, it's probably a good time for you to, take the time to do an inventory of like yourself. What do you care about? What are your principles? What are your values? What are the things that motivate you? I'm very hesitant to say passion because passion can fade. But just think about the core things that you really want to make an impact on, or how you feel like, what are the strengths that you can bring to something, or the skills that you can bring to something. I don't think you have to dismiss, like, okay, I studied like humanities and languages. I'm going to put it aside for something else. I think that will only enhance what you have to offer to wherever you go. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just a lot of taking the time to reflect on, what it is that drives you, and finding alignment with what job or role is out there. For example, for me in, tech, I think I draw a lot on like my background, especially working for a multinational company, being able to work, with different people from different cultures and speaking different languages. Like, I think that's a really big skill that I've drawn from, as well as, just being able to study and speak more than one language. I mean, I think it is kind of rare, because most folks I work with maybe haven't studied another language, or actually that may not be true. I think a lot of people are bilingual, but I think it's like, you can apply your language skills to perhaps learning Python or learning SQL, because those are also languages as well. So it's, I think, how you frame what it is. If you're trying to gain new skills, just approach things and make it familiar to you, so it's easier to kind of adopt them.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Erika. I think you've shared a lot of great advice for us. I've loved hearing about like how you've made the various pivots that you have throughout your career journey. I think change is always scary, and it takes a lot of courage and resilience to be able to push through them. And it's also a lot of work, I'm sure, to, like you mentioned, really focus on who you are, like kind of hash out your values and principles and what motivates you, and deciding like how to move forward with that.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for all of that, Erika. It's been really good hearing about your journey about self-discovery and career reinvention and omotenashi. The team actually has a really fun activity lined up for you before we move on to Q&A. So if I could hand over to Richard.
Yes, thank you, Sabrina, and thanks for sharing, Erika. Some really interesting insights in there. As someone who totally changed careers, it is, I think people sometimes underestimate the ability to repurpose your existing skills and go in different directions. So that's really interesting. Even gets me thinking at this stage of my career. Okay, so next we're going to do a Mentimeter. First, we'll start with the Wordcloud. So if you can log into Mentimeter, either with the QR code on your phone or in the chat for the event, we've shared a link. Or you can just type in www.menti.com and key in this 8-digit code and join. Let's see, give you another minute to join, and then I'll share the Menti results. First, we'll have share the results of that word cloud about omotenashi. And then we can have a couple quiz questions, and then we'll go into Q&A. Okay, I see. It looks like we only have 7 people joining. Is anyone having trouble joining the Mentimeter? Be nice to have a few more to have a quiz. I find the QR code is the easiest way to join. Okay, a few more people have joined. Okay, I will go ahead. Even after I change the screen, the link and the QR code are in the chat. I will go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, so these are can you see this? Erika, can you see the results? Yeah, you can. Okay. What do you think about these? I saw there was one. Is this a real word? I wonder if that was sort of amano jaku. One time somebody told me wabi sabi, they don't exist. Forget about that. I think that was actually someone famous. Was it Seidenstecker? I saw a speech one time and he's like, people are always talking about wabi sabi. It doesn't actually exist. I don't know if that's what that comment is supposed to mean. What do you think about some of these words people put up?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very like it's a full picture. I love the Tokyo Olympics because I know it got a lot of comments about one of the Olympics, I guess, administrators. But yeah, this is I mean, I think that really encompasses what it is. And it's just interesting how much of this also kind of overlaps with like what we consider as UX or user experience.
Great. I liked your point about anticipating a problem and fixing it. That's the kind of user experience, like, say at a hotel, that I think would really stick with you. Okay, thanks to everyone. We'll move on to the quiz. Okay, as usual, this is the faster you answer, the more points you get, and at the end we will have a winner. Oh, looks like we lost some people. Give everyone a minute to join. Okay. I think that's probably, looks like only about half of you are managing to join. I think we'll go ahead. All right, so our first question, just to tease out a bit more interesting anecdotes from Erika's past. So we have 3 Murakamis on this slide. Which of these famous Murakamis has Erika not met? So we have Takashi Murakami, Murakami Haruki, and Nijiro Murakami, who I wasn't as familiar with. 3 famous Murakamis, 2 of which Erika has met. I think there might be a way of figuring out. Excellent. What do you think, Erika? Is this, how do you think people got that?
Yeah, I have no idea, but that's correct.
So Murakami Takashi-san is he's an artist, so maybe people knew you have an artsy background. So can you tell us about your meeting with him?
Yeah, so when I moved here in 2016, it was, I think, the second year of the Seattle Art Fair. And at the time, the Takashi Murakami's studio, Kai Kai Kiki, was doing an exhibition or a gallery installation with Juxtaposed magazine, which is like a contemporary arts and culture magazine. And I was in South Lake Union at the space that they rented, and he was just standing outside and nobody recognized him. So I just ended up, going up to him, like introducing myself, asking him if I could take a photo. So yeah, it was really cool. It was just amazing to see like, this is a celebrity and nobody knows who he is.
I wouldn't know. And in fact, I had to go, I'm ashamed to say I had to go look it up, but then I was like, oh yes, of course. So I've taken many photos with his artworks. There was a huge golden sunflower at Roppongi Hills last year, and my family and I took a photo there. So 1 or 2 degrees separated, but that's very cool. And how about Murakami Haruki, arguably, one of the most famous Japanese the world over? When did you meet him?
And I just saw Travis's comment in the chat. And yes, I did meet Murakami Haruki at the University of Hawai'i. At the time, he was a visiting professor with the East Asian Language and Literature Department. And I guess part of that gig was that he would hold office hours for students. So somehow I found out about this and would go to his office hours, even though I was not enrolled in a literature course. And I would just talk to him and ask him questions about like his stories and his characters. Obviously on his door, he had a no recording, no photos, basically photos recording Tinshi sign. And, but it was just kind of amazing to just kind of sit with such a creative and smart mind and yeah, just a great opportunity.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I guess that's one where even I might have had a guess because I know he has a Hawaii connection. He's famous. I think he wrote that book about running in Hawaii. Murakami Nijiro, I had to look him up, but apparently he's in a Netflix series called Alice in Borderland, and he was in the movie Rurouni Kenshin, which I think is based on a manga, and he was one of the voices in Wes Anderson's Isle of Dogs. Who knew? So I think I'll go check out one of his, a young ikemen actor. Okay, question number 2. The leaderboard. Let's see who got this one. The mysterious A with a crown. Excellent. Guess we'll find out who that is if they take home the prize. All right, question 2. So pre-COVID, where did most Hawaii tourists hail from? And we have 3 options. We have Japan, China, and the US. So we have, looks like 14 people competing. This one's tricky. Yeah, so I'll give the numbers quickly because I was curious. I went and looked this up. So it says in 2019, there were 10.4 million visitors by air. 1.5 from Japan, about 7 million from the US, 4.6 million from the West Coast, 2.3 million from the East Coast. And then the third was actually Canada, 0.5 million. There were only 92,000 visitors from China in 2019. And it was apparently, the peak was 150K. So I don't know if that was like the trade war or because they have Hainan or various other places that the Chinese end up going. But yeah, I was a bit surprised by that. What are your thoughts, Erika, on having seen, you've been away from Hawaii for a long time, but.
Yeah, I think so I used to work in travel marketing, and most of our business, or all of our business, was for the Japanese travel companies. So I knew there were a lot of Japanese visitors coming. I just, I guess it's more obvious because, you'll see signs in Japanese, stores in Waikiki and restaurants prefer hiring folks that can speak Japanese because of this. But yeah, I mean, it makes sense that, now that I live on the West Coast of the continental United States, it makes sense that there are a lot of people going from here to Hawaii. I can see that a lot when I try to go home during the holidays and the tickets are $1,000. And yeah, the demand I think is really is there. So yeah, it was surprising to me, but now I understand why.
Great. My daughter has been pestering me to go to Hawaii. I guess because her classmates, they say, "Where'd you go during Golden Week or Obon?" And still, I guess Hawaii is a top destination. So I'm guessing they're probably now that people can come back to Japan without quarantine, probably really ramping up. Travis, well done. Okay. And our last question of our quiz. So which of these paintings are an example of rimpa? For some reason, there's a hiker there. The paintings are The Great Wave off Kanagawa, Red and White Plum Blossoms in La Japonaise. It's hard just off the name of the artwork. We tricked people. I'd never heard of rimpa, so I guess I'm in good company.
I think this answer is wrong. Well, I don't think I know this answer is wrong.
Oh no, which one was it supposed to be?
It's Red and White Plum Blossom.
Oh, it is. Shimata. Hai. Shitsurei shimashita. So is this a particular area of interest to you, the rimpa school?
Yeah, so it's kind of what I wrote my thesis on for my MA in art history is rimpa and how it kind of manifests itself from the 1600s to the present. And Ogata Korin, who painted Red and White Plum Blossoms, is a key defining figure of the rimpa school, and really kind of gave it he didn't give it its name, but it was given his name during the modern period. So yeah, very, it's a genre of painting that's near and dear to my heart.
And what are the other two paintings? Are these?
Yeah, so yeah, I think everyone's familiar with Hokusai's Great Wave woodblock print. So that's an ukiyo-e in style. And then the La Japonaise is Claude Monet's kind of cultural appreciation of Japanese aesthetics. And he had painted his wife in a Japanese kimono with kind of some fans in the background. Excellent.
Okay, sorry everyone, but the good news is that no one got it right, so there are no points to reallocate. Well done, Travis. Excellent. Okay, and so that wraps up our little activity, and I guess we'll throw it open to Q&A now. Sabrina, do you want to resume the Q&A MC?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone. That was fun. I think the Mentimeters are always fun because you get to hear about these like little off-topic experiences that our speakers have. Yeah. I love to hear more about the office hours with Murakami Haruki too. But before that, we did get a couple questions. So maybe we could go through those first. The first one we have is how easy was it to jump from art history to information management? And maybe more broadly, do you have any more advice on switching gears?
That's a really good question. And I mean, I think it's kind of like, what hoops do you have to jump through in order to be taken seriously, especially in tech? I think there's a lot of, there's more of an effort to hire folks from different backgrounds because, when you are designing services and products, like you want to make sure you're designing and representing, humans, and we're all, very different individuals. So it doesn't make sense for them to continue only hiring computer science majors or MBA grads. But I would say, it's all a reflection of what your transferable skills are. I mean, art history is literally information management. Like, you're curating like a story about human history and civilization. And that's, it was just kind of fascinating for me because
it doesn't look like you have an app named History. You'll need to get
techno. All right, Siri's kind of trying to get into the conversation, but yeah, as far as, you know, like when you're really thinking about what you're doing, especially if you're working in the humanities, like you're telling a story about something, and anything you do, especially with me in tech, like, and working with data and visualization, like I'm telling a story about the business. So I'm using the same kind of skills as far as organizing how information and knowledge it should be communicated in like a logical way. And I think the hardest part is that maybe recruiters now, they don't see that connection, that, you know, because you can communicate this idea or show that you can do research at a very you know, deep level or things like that, you really have to work on how do you communicate that and really highlight that the skills you've gained in one area are adaptable to another area. I think that was probably the most difficult thing to kind of communicate, as far as, you know, on a piece of paper, on a resume. And to be frank, I mean, that's also what motivated me to study information management at the University of Washington, is because it gave me that resume line. I mean, not just the training in data science and UX research, but it also gave me that credential that I can work and function in a technical environment, which is sad to say that, but I mean, it is being honest. As far as advice on switching gears, I mean, I think that we're all capable of, you know, carving the life that we want and carving out the career that we want. You just have to kind of figure out what it is, and also be able to identify the steps that it takes to get there. For me, I think I could do what I've been doing even without my master's of science, but it was just jumping through that hoop of getting that extra degree to kind of prove that, hey, I belong here. I think it has a lot to do, and that also has a lot to do with like your imposter syndrome. But I mean, those feelings are valid, especially when you're not being taken seriously because you don't have that extra technical degree.
Yeah, that must have been a struggle. Like, I see, as someone who also pivoted into tech from a very different space, I was in the sustainability space. I definitely identify with some of that, struggling to kind of clarify your value proposition, even though I think the fact that I'm sure many of us at the IUC have like experiences across so many spaces that we're really good at applying things across domains, and that's very valuable. But that doesn't necessarily come out like clearly in a resume.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Erika. And we did have another question on the P course. So it seems that, yeah, someone's interested in hearing more about it. Could you share a little bit more about that? I don't think we've had a speaker who's attended the P course, have we? Yeah. Yeah, so Erika, you get to be the first one.
Yeah. So yeah, the P course itself, it's basically self-directed studies. So I think typically, you know, usually I think the P stands for professional course. Yes. And, you know, people will come with like kind of their own objective of what they want to accomplish, and kind of work it out with the appropriate sensei that's kind of you know, the owner of that domain. And I think that's a great opportunity, especially if you have to do really focused like translation work, or you're trying to like ramp up on a concept or take some kind of exam in Japanese. Like, I think that's a really great opportunity to pursue, because you're getting dedicated time with a sensei just to focus on what you need to focus on. And luckily, I think, or just the way the stars aligned, getting that FLAS fellowship and being able to allocate that to the P course and translated a few documents for my thesis, I was very grateful, because there's no way I could have done it on my own. I probably wouldn't even be motivated to do food on my own as well. So I really appreciate the opportunity to work with Adi Sensei to really kind of help me, or to have her explain to me, like, you know, certain grammar points or vocabulary and things like that. Oh, yeah, should probably take another one. 33% discount.
Yeah, I'm sure some people will be interested in that. Sounds like it was a really good experience that allowed you to work on in a very focused manner with senseis that could kind of contribute to your area of expertise.
Yeah.
Thoughts are filling up fast, Giles.
I'll only do it if it's in person. That's my only thing. I have to wait for the borders to open up again.
Maybe we can hear a little bit more about from Giles later about like the situation at the IUC now. Yeah. But yeah, before that, we did have some other questions too. Someone asked, can you tell us more about figuring out what you really wanted to do in your career? Well, I guess you touched a little bit more, a little bit on this, but this person says there are so many things that are interesting to him, her, or them, and they can't figure out what to choose.
Yeah, I mean, that's hard. And I mean, I guess this is where you really have to kind of block out time for yourself. I do vision boarding a lot. Usually before the start of every year, I do a vision board for how I want the next year to, you know, kind of map out. I find that really helpful for me. What I've been doing lately is leading kind of workshops at work on vision boarding, and also just road mapping your life. It sucks when you think of yourself as a product, but that's what you are. I think that's when we think about like marketing yourself and branding yourself. Yeah, you basically kind of have to think of yourself as a product, like what's going to happen at these certain phases, and kind of start to make decisions. And I think, you know, when you're in this process of kind of figuring out like, okay, I think there's a change that I need to make, I'm not sure what it is, it's a good opportunity to just really explore all the things you like or that interest you, and then really start to kind of figure out which is the ones that are, what are the ones that can like, that are relatable, or that can kind of like, that you can combine, or things like that, in order to kind of start to map out what kind of role or what kind of career that you want to build for yourself. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of my friends that I've talked to, we seem to be in this kind of situation. I don't think it's Saturn returns. I think it's just like, you know, coming out of a pandemic and, you know, realizing like, you know, kind of reframing what's important to you, or what's valuable to you. How do you want to spend your time? It seems to be a reoccurring thing, or a reoccurring trend, I think, with a lot of folks that I've been talking to. So whoever wrote this question,
Did we lose Erika?
skills.
Yeah, I was going to ask the same.
Oh,
Oh, looks like she's back.
oh, you're
Oh.
back.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's just my internet connection is unstable. Oh no.
Oh, yeah, I think we lost you around the part where you said, a lot of people are struggling with this question, coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, I've noticed a trend, at least with like my network of folks, that we're all kind of figuring out what's important to us, how do we want to spend our time, you know, what's valuable. So I think I just wanted to shout out this person who asked this question. You're not alone. I'm going through this. I'm also thinking about where I want to be, you know, how I want to reinvent my career. And I think in this process, you know, I realized like I do want to be more involved, and I want to bring my Japanese skills back. So maybe even thinking of a role that has something to do, a more closer relationship with Japan. So I mean, it never stops. You're always going to want to reinvent yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. As I said before, nothing is fixed. The only constant is change. So just embrace that change, and know that, you know, it's going to take a lot of guts, but you will get glory. So just take that time to invest in yourself and figure out what you want.
That's reassuring, Erica. I think we always have to confront change, like whether it's intentional or not. So it's nice to learn about your process of like figuring all of that out. And someone also has a question for advice that you would give to people who want to pivot to program management or maybe project management.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I will plug, LinkedIn Learning, YouTube. Like there are so many resources that are free that you can, take advantage of and just learn more about the field. I think that's super important. There's also, as you start to kind of get more serious about wanting to be in this space, like there's a bunch of like certifications that you can do, like the PMP. I'm not sure how valuable they are, because I think a lot of what you like, the most valuable skills are things you learn on the job. But I also think it's important to think about, like, reflect on yourself, especially if you have been to grad school. You've obviously had to write a thesis or a dissertation, and you've obviously had to manage it on your own. So what are the skills that you employ to make sure that you're able to write it and submit it and, go through all those hoops? Like you're literally program managing yourself when you're a graduate student or a student in general. So I think we all, it's just one of those things that there's a title for, but like it's something that you're already doing. So if you have any imposter syndrome around that, like just dispel that, because you got this far. You went to IUC. It's not easy to get into this program. You've graduated IUC if you're not, you're in it right now. You're aspiring to be an IUC alumni. But there's a lot of things you have to do, like, and it's a lot of administration work, a lot of just kind of communication work. You're doing this stuff already. I think you just kind of have to get more, start to speak the language of it. Maybe that's what it is, or start identifying what you're doing as program management. And that's when those free courses that I mentioned earlier come in, because you can start to name, oh, this is what it means to like do some kind of like analysis or some kind of like communications or doing a rhythm of business. Like you're doing it already, you just don't know it. And that's probably advice that could have helped me before, when I was, really having doubts about like, if I could do this. I'm like, no, I'm already doing it. I've been doing it. It's just, I've just been calling it something else.
Thank you, Erica. As one of the comments, I think it's so interesting that you talked about like treating your career as a product and your life as a program. Obviously very good at drawing connections between different spaces, as we talked about like throughout the alumni talk. We did also have 2 more questions. Are we okay on time? Okay. Yeah, they are more art history or art focus.
Sabrina, I would suggest they could just get in touch directly with Erika. I think she would be happy to.
Okay.
Answer
Yeah, we do
questions
have breakout rooms after this, so if you'd be interested to talk to Erica like directly, maybe we can you can stay and we can try to put you in a room with Erica. Yeah.
Okay, everyone, I think we're going to wrap up now. We always, last time we did not, but we try to do a group photo. So if you don't mind, this is a photo that could be in the IUC Alumni newsletter, or somebody might post it on social media. So if you're okay with that, please turn on your camera and we'll take a group photo.
Let me see. I saw Shiba. I'm gonna see if mine will want to join this photo.
Oh, yay. Take your dog to work day. That's awesome. Oh, so cute. Okay, I think Tarani is going to take a photo. Tarani, do you want to count us down?
Yes. So everyone ready? Smile, have your video open if you feel comfortable. Okay, if not, okay. 3、2、1、チーズ。あるのかな。じゃあもう一回。3、2、1. Oh, okay. So yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm allowed to take screenshots, but yeah, if I have it, I'll send it.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you very much, Erika, for sharing with us. You'll stick with us, I think, for our next half hour of breakouts. So hopefully somebody might be able to ask you more questions there. Thanks, Sabrina, for leading the discussion. You always make everyone feel like a star. And thank you to Tarani for setting things up, for Jasmine for helping in the back. And I think Jasmine's going to arrange the breakout rooms in a second. We're always looking for feedback. Just today, I had someone volunteer to act as a speaker in the future. If you have any ideas, we've only been doing it about every other month. So we do have a long list, but we're always looking for people who might be appropriate to jump the queue. We try to alternate male and female, get some people in Japan, some people abroad. Yeah, so thanks for joining once again. And thanks, of course, to Giles and Alice. I think both of you are in the audience yet again today. It's always great having the support of the IUC. And yes, if you're in the same room with Giles, maybe you can ask about the current year, which I believe everyone safely made it to Japan. Was that already maybe back in March? So yeah, thanks everyone. And we will wrap it up now. If you want to stay for the breakout rooms, hang in there. And Jasmine, can you work your magic?
Yeah, sure thing. Thank you again, everyone. I'm just gonna give a couple of seconds to see if anybody wants to dip out before the rooms are made.
And Erika, if you want to say one last go aisatsu.
Yeah, I think Richard, said, I definitely reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn, obviously. Please do, if you have any questions just about how do you make the next step, or how do you start to plan out kind of your career change? I'm always happy to share kind of my opinions or just kind of my more examples of how I was able to do it. So definitely want to support everyone. And I also want to bring more people from the humanities and culture space into tech, because I think we need it. So yeah, if you find a job on Microsoft you want to apply to, I'm happy to, submit a referral. Yeah, just get in touch.